Hello, and welcome to the Truist Foundation Fellowship Information Session. Thank you so much for joining today. I look forward to speaking to you a bit about this program and how to build the strongest application for the admissions process and the admissions team. So before we get started, what's on the agenda today? I'm only going to talk to you for about 30 minutes. That's going to leave a whole 30 minutes for questions. Ask all your burning questions. I am recording the first part of this session, but I will not record your questions, so feel free to be as candid as you'd like to be in that portion of the info session. Save all your questions. I'd love to hear from you. Introductions. So please type in the chat your name, what challenge in the world or challenge in Georgia, in your community, you are working to solve, and let us know a bit about you. I love to share a fun fact as well. So introducing myself, my name is Miranda Williamson. I am the Senior Director of Search at Watson Institute. We are an organization that has been training and working with impact-centered entrepreneurs for the last 10 years. I've been with the organization 2.5. I do mission-driven work. I do recruiting and admissions, but in particular, recruiting and admissions for social justice-oriented programs. I believe strongly in removing barriers to education opportunities for individuals across socioeconomic backgrounds and other barriers. One of the first barriers folks face is the application. It can often be very intimidating and be geared towards individuals who are very competent and comfortable completing applications and have done it many times in their lives. I like to demystify this process, remove those barriers, and give you all the tools that you need to be successful in this very first step of the journey towards a fellowship like the Truist Foundation Fellowship. I'm going to talk a bit about the program first to kick us off, just to make sure you're in the right place, make sure that you have a general basic understanding of the fellowship. Please feel free to save questions and ask them during the question portion of this info session. I would love to answer all detailed programmatic questions. I'm going to give you tips for building a strong application to this program, but these tips are also applicable to future programs that you may apply to. These are very useful tips, and also feel free to ask me any detailed questions about any piece of the information I share. I'll also share a bit about where I develop these tips, a bit about the background I have in admissions and recruiting. So that brings us to questions. And then, of course, I'll talk a little bit about what's next in the process. Is this fellowship for you? Are you in the right place? So this fellowship equips entrepreneurs, small business owners, and nonprofit founders with technical training, directly applicable business skills, financial literacy to increase your positive impact within the communities through job creation and economic development and mobility. This is a fellowship for impacting individuals who are serving emerging markets across urban and rural Georgia. Now, so to break that down or reframe that, we are looking for individuals working across multiple sectors, so that small businesses, venture founders, startups, nonprofit founders in all different types of fields. So that could be you have a small shop of some kind, you have a web-based platform, maybe it's an app, maybe it's an educational program that doesn't actually have a brick and mortar location. So we are not specific on the industry type. Where we are specific is we are looking for individuals who want to have a positive impact in their communities. Now, maybe that positive impact in your community is the actual work that you're doing. For example, we have an individual joining this program who is working on a web-based platform that provides education, culturally relevant, culturally sensitive educational opportunities to children in their community. We have another individual who is from Atlanta, just went through one of our fellowships, and he developed an app that provides culturally sensitive medical advice to Black and African American women in particular. Very impactful work. The work could also be that maybe your community needs access to more job opportunities. So through your venture, maybe it's a farming or agricultural venture, you are creating more opportunities and access to jobs for your community. So those are just some examples of the type of work that might qualify for this fellowship. Now, one thing that there's no flexibility in is that we are looking for individuals who are working in Georgia. That doesn't mean your work can't expand outside of Georgia, but it does need to be within Georgia as well. This is a fellowship that is funded by Truist Bank. Truist Bank is represented in Georgia, and they are really interested in impacting and building the financial literacy skills of individuals and entrepreneurs in Georgia. So that's where this comes in, and that's where the funding for this particular fellowship that is powered by and hosted by Watson Institute is coming from. The dates of this fellowship, February 11th is when this fellowship begins to June 1st. So the fellowship will kick off with a one-day in-person immersive experience in Atlanta, Georgia, and then we'll continue the remainder of the program mostly virtual. When I say mostly, because we are looking at hosting multiple opportunities to meet up with your cohort during the experience, multiple opportunities to connect in person. So this will be a combination of virtual and in person, what we call in the education world, hybrid. It's really the best of both worlds. So the commitment, this is a 16-week program. The immersive in-person experience, you can see I have it listed there when the date is and what the time commitment is for that experience. The remainder of that immersive experience will be held virtually, so it's a heavy time commitment from the 11th to the 17th. So that's when we're looking at a little bit more of a time commitment on your part. The remainder of the program is broken down where there's only about 8 hours to 12 hours per week. So it is work, and you will be involved in committing quite a bit of time to this program, but I want to clarify what that time commitment looks like, because there's often a bit of confusion, like, are you asking me to take all that time away from my venture, away from my business to work on this fellowship? And the answer is no, not really. We're asking you to commit to doing specific work towards your business through what we are offering. And let me explain a little bit more. We're not a higher education model. And what I mean by that is a higher education model, for those of you who have been through an academic program, those of you who maybe have experience in higher ed, what that looks like, what higher ed looks like is maybe you read a bunch. And it's very engaging reading, and it's great. And then you weave together the arguments in a research paper. You're writing 10-page papers. We are not that. Everything we're asking you to do is going to go back into your business. Maybe it's analyzing your finance and accounting model for your business, figuring out where you can improve. Maybe it is rewriting some job descriptions in your business and finding out what can be done better. We also are very leadership focused, so maybe it's analyzing yourself as a leader and a manager and how you can better serve your community. So we're really asking you to invest that time back into your work, back into your business. We're not asking you to invest it in something that may expand your way of critically thinking, because don't get me wrong, I am all for higher ed. I have a higher ed background. I have multiple degrees, love higher ed. But what higher ed does is it supports critical thinking, and it isn't necessarily giving you the immediately applicable tools to build a business. Whereas we at Watson Institute are more about supplementing higher ed and creating a different model that is giving you those immediately applicable tools. Okay, great. So I just want to give you a little bit of like context for what this virtual format will look like once you're in this virtual world, after you've all met in person, had a great time, met your programs manager, and had a time to network a little bit. We have some components that are crucial to the Watson experience, and one is mentor connections. Mentoring is such a valuable tool. We are going to provide multiple opportunities for you to connect with individuals in our network for small roundtable conversations, small groups, and these are going to be opportunities for you to ask questions, to seek advice in areas that you need some mentoring in. That's what that's going to look like. The other component is what we call Impact Series. And Impact Series is a series of workshops led by really high-level, seasoned professionals in the field. I'm not going to share any examples because we actually tailor this to the cohort. So after we complete building the cohort, your cohort of Truist Fellows, which will wrap up on January 15th when we receive all the applications, we will build out a lineup of Impact Series speakers that will speak on areas that are of interest to the cohort. So for example, if we have a lot of individuals working in education, we'll bring in high-level individuals who have done that work in educational programs before. They will share their successes, they will share their failures, maybe they'll lead a very tailored workshop to the group to provide a particular skill set that was useful to them in their work as an entrepreneur in education. Community building. One of the biggest value adds of our program is that we build a community. So it can be a very lonely journey as an entrepreneur, in particular as an entrepreneur who is seeking to create positive change in your community and in the world at large. So we build a cohesive community not only of your cohort, which will be 15 to 17 individuals, but with the mentors that you connect with the Impact Series speakers, with the Watson team, and with all of our global alumni. So we are working to build a community. Then workshops. As I said, we are offering hands-on skills to help you advance your work as an entrepreneur. So maybe those skills are leadership skills. Maybe those skills are concrete entrepreneurial skills. Maybe they fall under the line of like public speaking skills, building out your pitch deck, building out your lean canvas for your business, all of these concrete skills that you need. We offer these in what we call modules. So what I mean by that is you'll be able to select the modules that work for you. We've decided that this works best because maybe you don't need to work on your pitch deck. Maybe you've been through multiple pitch competitions before and your pitch deck's pretty awesome. So you can select the modules that work for you. You will need to select a required number of modules, but we want you to be able to tailor this fellowship to really work for you. We will have weekly check-ins as well. So we will be checking in as a cohort and separately. So there will be plenty of time to communicate with your cohort, communicate with the Watson team about what's working and what some areas are that you may need some extra support. That in-person programming. One thing I have not mentioned yet is the base camp. So a base camp is a 3-day intensive program where you, the fellow, will execute a training, an entrepreneurial training. Now, maybe you have a set audience, or maybe you'll need to go out and find an audience. So the idea of this training is to help create impact in your community. It's an opportunity for us to share our curriculum. We share a curriculum to host this 3-day intensive program, and we also give $1,000 in funding to host this program. So we are very supportive with this. We have quite a bit of support, training, funding, curriculum to help you make this happen. We also have an individual who'll be working in Georgia to support with on-the-ground work, questions about event planning. We are very supportive in helping you launch this program. Now, this can be tailored. Let's say you already run an educational program. This can be tailored to your particular audience. This can be tailored in a way that makes sense for you. For example, we did work with a fellow who his community is neurodivergent. And so it made no sense for him to have a 3-day intensive program because his community needed it broken up in smaller chunks. So he broke it up over the course of 5 days for his community. Completely fine. This is the one required output from this fellowship. This is the one thing we will be tracking, and this is the one thing that is really required of you to produce at the end of the fellowship. Now, we do require about 20 to 25 participants for this program. So that's what we're looking for is, did you host the space camp, and did you get the required number of participants? So that's what we'll be looking for as the output for this program. Much more about the base camp to come. Seed funding, probably everybody's wondering about seed funding. It is a common question. Seed funding is not a huge part of this program. We are more focused on leadership development, skills building. However, it's really nice to be able to offer some seed funding. If your sole reason for joining this program is seed funding, you might not be in the right place, because this is more about community, more about networking, more about training. However, we do have a little bit of seed funding, which is great. It's like a icing on the cake, cherry on top. So we have $15,000 in seed funding money available, and fellows will get up to $6,000 in seed funding for top fellows of the program. It'll be distributed based on performance throughout the program. So it's a way for us to encourage attendance, participation, and really engagement in the program. Then one component I didn't mention is Summit. Summit is the culminating experience of the program. It's like, think of it like a graduation, like a pitch competition. It's an opportunity for us to invite our global community to view your work, to view how far you've come in the program, for you to pitch, for us to invite potential investors. We have a network of funders that like to attend these. This is a great opportunity for you to showcase your work, and we love our summits. They're just an exciting time for all of us. My aim for the next part of this, the next 10 minutes, I'm going to fit this all in 10 minutes. My aim for the next 10 minutes of this conversation is to share some tips and tricks for building a strong application for the Truist Foundation Fellowship. So I just like to remove the mystery, like I said earlier. There's a lot of mystery around building a strong application, what that looks like, and I'd like to just really remove that mystery. So first step, you attended the webinar. Great job. You did the first step. The next step is to submit your application. The deadline is January 15th. I recommend always submitting an application a little bit early. Waiting till the deadline puts you in a pile with a bunch of other people, because everyone waits till the deadline, no matter how much I give this tip. So I do recommend submitting a bit early. It's reviewed within 2 weeks. There is an interview, a 20-minute interview with our VP of programs. Her name is Isabel De Jesus, and she's pretty amazing. So I do recommend bringing some questions for her, some questions that are engaging, and get to know her a little bit. She's one of on our leadership team at Watson Institute, and she's very knowledgeable. You are then judged for fellowship fit based on your application and the interview. Next, your information will be sent to the funders. Truist has representatives that wants to review about 20 to 25 of our top candidates. So they will be reviewing and providing their feedback on these fellows. So we want you to look strong for the funder review. And then the fellowship award. Once your fellowship is awarded, you will be asked to sign a memorandum of understanding, basically committing to the program. So some pitfalls to avoid when completing your application. Do not answer the questions with one sentences. You have 250 to 500 words for each question. I suggest utilizing that space. Don't have to go beyond 250 words if you don't have anything else to say, but do fully articulate your story and the responses. So don't forget, grammar is important. Grammar really is important. Our funders like to see good grammar. We like to read good grammar. So I recommend at least one proofreader. Do not complete your application in a language other than English. As I said, we're a global program, and this is actually quite common. We get a lot of applications in other languages. And while we are a bilingual team, multilingual team, actually, we speak so many languages on our team. We have Russian, Spanish, I think we have French and Portuguese as well. Turkish. We have quite a few languages represented on our team, but please use English. The program is taught in English. Do not copy and paste your mission statement from the United Nations website. We see that a lot. It's called plagiarism, and we do not appreciate it. So please put it in your own words. So tips for some strong applications. So I actually have run admissions committees for quite some time in my career, and I worked with a team of PhDs in actually a law professor with a PhD in human rights law, an individual with a PhD in conflict resolution. So some really smart individuals, and I went to them for these tips. They would always sit on my admissions committees, and they were great. So I went to them and asked them for some tips. So this is where I got these tips. I did not make them up. Be specific. The strongest applications are very specific. So when we ask about your venture and about your work, be specific. What do you do? What communities do you support? How many people are on your team? Be very specific. We want to know those things. Don't lose sight of the prompts. So definitely we want responses that speak directly to the prompts. Your personal story is so crucial, so important. What drives you? What motivates you? How are you connected to the work that you're doing? Is it a family legacy? We want to know that. Do you have a personal story that connects to the work you're doing? That's very valuable to us. So your pitch, include your pitch. We ask for a short description of your venture and your work. That's your pitch. That's what we want to know. And as I mentioned earlier, submit your application early, a few days early, a week early. That all those details really matter. Then your 20-minute interview. Let's say you followed all my tips and did an excellent job on your application, and we invite you to a 20-minute interview. Be sure to show up on time with a solid internet connection. I see a lot of folks on iPhones in their car. Try not to do that. Find a good quiet location. Dress for success, whatever that means in your culture. We are a global cohort. We understand that dressing for success means something different depending on your cultural context, and we welcome that diversity. Prepare. So be prepared to talk about your passion, your story, as I mentioned earlier, your work, the community that you serve. And come prepared to ask 1 to 2 questions. I will say the most common question that we get is about money, is about seed funding, is about finances. So please come prepared to ask a question beyond that to help you stand out a bit. There will be optional questions on the application. The optional question that I highly recommend is the question about the business model. So if you do have a business model, please provide that. If you do not have it, you do not need to create it for this application. There will be an opportunity to create one during the program if you do not have one. So don't feel obligated to answer the optional questions, but if you do have those resources available, we would love to see them. Great. I think I stayed right on time as promised. So I'm going to go ahead and stop recording at the moment and open it up to questions.